I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse, the skyline of Manhattan glittering beneath me like a crown of stolen stars. The city felt quiet at this height, almost gentle, though I knew it was roaring below. Taxi horns, rushing footsteps, arguments spilling onto sidewalks. Up here, it was another world. My world. The silk of my ivory blouse whispered as I folded my arms, staring at my own reflection in the glass. A woman in her late 20s, polished, composed, successful. People saw the confidence, the sharp heels, the carefully drawn eyeliner. What they didn't see were the ghosts I carried, tucked neatly behind every measured smile. The buzz of my phone broke through the silence. I turned, heels clicking on the marble floor, and picked it up from the glass table. A text message lit up the screen.
Hey, can we talk?
I'm downstairs. Emily. My sister. I laughed under my breath, soft, ironic, the kind of laugh that tasted of both victory and pain. Emily. The girl who once claimed my bedroom like it was her birthright. The one my parents supported, leaving me in the cold. Now she was at my door. In my building. My penthouse. And the best part? She wasn't here as a guest. She was here because she lived here, because every month Emily mailed me a rent check. My pulse quickened, not with fear, but with something sharper. Satisfaction, maybe. Justice. But under it, a tremor of vulnerability stirred. Because facing Emily meant facing the very beginning of my story, the moment everything changed. I was 15 when Emily decided she wanted my bedroom. Not asked, decided. My room was bigger, with the only window that caught the afternoon sun. I loved how the golden light spilled across my desk, warming the pages of my notebooks as I wrote. It was my sanctuary, the one place I could breathe in a house where I often felt invisible. But one Saturday morning, I came home from a friend's house and found Emily standing in the doorway with her hands on her hips, like a queen declaring her throne. My parents were behind her, their arms crossed, avoiding my eyes. "Sweetheart," Mom said carefully. "It just makes sense. Emily's older. She needs more space." I remember the way my throat tightened. "But it's my room," I whispered, my voice trembling. Dad cleared his throat, the way he always did when he wanted to end a discussion before it began. "Don't be dramatic. You'll manage just fine in Emily's old room. She has college applications coming up. She needs a quiet place." The world tilted in that moment. My hands shook as I stepped inside, staring at the posters already peeled off my wall, the bookshelves half empty, Emily's grin widening as if she had won some invisible war. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But all that came out was silence. That night, as I packed my things into boxes, I found the leather journal my grandmother had given me for my 13th birthday. On the first page, she had written in her looping script, "When they take your space, create your own." Her words burned through me. So I wrote. Every night, with shaky hands and tear-stained cheeks, I wrote down everything I felt. The anger, the hurt, the vow that one day I would carve out a place no one could take from me. And on the day I slid my last box into Emily's old, cramped room, I made myself a promise. If they didn't see me here, I'd make sure the world saw me somewhere else. It was the first quiet rebellion of my life. I didn't know how or when, but I knew I wouldn't let that moment define me as powerless. The first few years after high school were nothing like the glossy success stories you read about. They were messy,
Raw.
relentless. When I finally left home at 18, I carried 2 suitcases, a handful of savings from part-time jobs, and that same leather journal my grandmother had given me. I rented a studio in Queens so small that if I stretched my arms, I could almost touch both walls. The paint peeled from the ceiling. The radiator hissed like an angry cat. But it was mine. For the first time, no one could shove me out of it. I worked 2 jobs, waitressing during the day, tutoring kids in math at night. My feet ached. My voice cracked. Sometimes, I'd collapse on the lumpy mattress with shoes still on. Bills piled high, and there were nights I cried into my pillow, wondering if I had made a mistake walking away from the comfort of home, no matter how unfair it had been. But every time doubt clawed at me, I opened my journal. I trace my grandmother's words with my fingertip. When they take your space, create your own. And I'd remind myself I wasn't building just a life. I was building a fortress. My break came in the most unexpected way. At the cafe where I worked weekends, a woman named Karen would come in every Friday afternoon. Always the same order. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream. She carried herself with sharp elegance, the kind that made people instinctively step aside. One day, as I scribbled notes in my journal during my short break, she noticed. "You write?" she asked, tilting her head. I flushed. "I try to. Just ideas. Business concepts. Things I'd like to do someday." She leaned closer, scanning the messy pages filled with sketches of logos, notes about startup costs, and motivational quotes I'd copied from library books. "You think like an entrepreneur," she said. "You ever thought about starting something real?" That conversation changed everything. Karen turned out to be an investor, one of those rare ones who actually believed in young, hungry talent. She didn't hand me a check, not at first. Instead, she offered advice, connections, and something I had craved for years, belief. Someone who looked at me and didn't see a fragile girl pushed out of her bedroom, but a woman capable of building empires. The road wasn't smooth. I stumbled more times than I can count. My first business idea flopped within 6 months. I was laughed out of meetings, dismissed as too young or too naive. Some nights, I doubted if I was built for this. But with each failure, I wrote down what went wrong and tried again. The first win was small, designing marketing materials for a local boutique. Then a second client came. Then another. Before long, I had enough work to quit waitressing. I still lived modestly, posting only simple updates online so my family assumed I was just getting by. But behind the curtain, I was laying bricks for the life they could never imagine. Contracts grew. Clients multiplied. Savings stacked higher. By 26, I signed my first lease for an upscale office space in Midtown. By 28, I had employees, actual people looking at me for direction. And yet, I kept my success quiet. No bragging, no family phone calls filled with details. Because part of me wanted the reveal to be like a lightning strike. Sudden, blinding, undeniable. The girl shoved out of her bedroom was becoming a woman who owned her own floors in the city skyline.
And none of them knew.
Not yet. When Emily stepped into my penthouse for the first time, her heels clicked against the polished marble like they didn't belong here. Her eyes darted everywhere. The chandelier above the foyer, the framed art along the hallway, the sweeping view of the Hudson River beyond the glass wall. She tried to hide her awe, but I caught it in the way her lips parted, the way her breath stalled for half a second. "So, this is where you live?" she said, her tone careful, as if she wasn't sure whether to sound impressed or unimpressed. I smiled politely.
"Yes."
"For a while now." I gestured toward the living room, where everything gleamed in curated elegance, a cream leather sectional, glass coffee table, abstract paintings I'd bought from emerging artists, and a vase of fresh lilies on the counter. The air smelled faintly of bergamot and cedar, my favorite candle burning in the corner. Emily sank into the couch, smoothing her skirt as though the fabric itself didn't feel expensive enough for the room. "It's nice," she said. Her voice cracked on the word. I watched her eyes flicker again, this time toward the framed certificates on the wall behind me, awards for business growth, leadership, entrepreneurship. My name printed in gold foil. "You've done well for yourself," she added, almost reluctantly. That was the moment I let the silence stretch. Long enough for her to feel the weight of every assumption she'd ever made about me. Finally, I said it. Soft, steady, sharp. "You know, Emily, when you took my bedroom, I thought I'd lost everything. But that day, I promised myself no one would ever decide where I belonged again. And now, here we are." Her gaze snapped to mine, defensive. "That was years ago. We were kids." "Kids, yes." I cut in. "But you were old enough to know you wanted the best room. Old enough to enjoy watching me lose something I loved. And Mom and Dad, they let you have it. They chose you." Her cheeks flushed. For once, she didn't have a comeback. I leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, my Louboutins catching the light. Funny how things turn, isn't it? You once made me pack up my things and move into a smaller space. And now… I let the words hang, savoring the irony. Now you pay me rent to live here. Emily's jaw tightened. That's not fair. I needed a place. This was convenient. I laughed, soft and ironic. Convenient? That's one word for it. Her eyes dropped to her lap, and I saw it then. The flicker of shame. The realization settling in. The sister she had dismissed, overshadowed, pushed aside, was sitting in front of her as the owner of everything around us. Emily, I said gently, though my voice carried steel, every month, the check you write doesn't just pay for this space. It pays for the lesson I learned because of you. It pays for the nights I stayed awake chasing opportunities instead of crying about what I lost. It pays for the woman I became. Her hands twisted in her lap. I didn't know you'd. I never thought you. Exactly, I said, leaning forward. You never thought I could. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. She couldn't look at me. She couldn't look at the skyline shimmering beyond the glass either. She just sat there, surrounded by proof of everything she once believed I wasn't capable of. And for the first time in years, I felt something shift in the air between us. It wasn't just a reveal. It was a reckoning. Emily stayed quiet for a long time, staring at the lilies on the counter as though they might explain how her younger sister had built all this. I let her sit with the silence. Sometimes silence does the work words can't. Finally, she looked up. So what now? Are you going to throw it in my face forever? I tilted my head, studying her. No, Emily. That's not who I am.
But things have changed.
And if you're living here, they change for you, too. Her brows knit together. What do you mean? I rose from the couch, my heels clicking softly as I walked to the window. The skyline stretched out in front of me, a reminder of how far I'd come. Then I turned back to her. First, I said, you respect my space. No barging in, no treating this place like it's yours by default. You're a tenant here, Emily. That means boundaries. She flinched but didn't argue. Second, I continued, I want you working. Not drifting, not leaning on excuses. You have a degree, use it. If you want to stay here, I expect proof that you're pursuing something. A job, a project, a plan. Anything that moves you forward. Emily's mouth opened, then shut. The old Emily, the one who used to throw tantrums until she got her way, was fighting to come out. But the setting, the roles, the truth of our lives now, it kept her quiet. And third, I said, softening my tone just slightly, you take responsibility. Not just for the rent, but for yourself. No more blaming others. No more waiting for people to hand you what you want. That ends here. Her eyes flashed. So basically, you're my landlord and my life coach? I gave a small smile. Call it whatever you want. But those are the conditions. If you want to live here, you live by them. If not, you're free to find someplace else. The tension hung heavy between us, but beneath it, something else stirred. Something almost tender. I didn't hate her. I didn't want revenge. I wanted her to grow, the way I had been forced to grow. I sat back down across from her, my voice softer now. Emily, this isn't about punishing you. It's about breaking the cycle. I won't let what happened between us repeat itself. Not here. Not in this home. Her eyes glistened, just faintly, as though the walls she'd built around herself were starting to crack. For once, she didn't look like the older sister who always won. She looked human, vulnerable. You really think I can change? She asked quietly. I held her gaze. I know you can, but it's up to you to prove it. For the first time since we were kids, the power was mine, not in a cruel way, but in a way that demanded accountability. Emily would either rise to meet it or walk away. And for the first time, I felt like both sisters might finally have a chance to become something better. The weeks that followed were different. Subtle, but noticeable. At first, I expected Emily to rebel against the conditions. I expected slammed doors, passive-aggressive comments, maybe even a quick exit from the penthouse. But instead, I watched her shift in small ways. She set alarms earlier, left for interviews in crisp blazers I hadn't seen her wear in years, and came home exhausted but quieter, more thoughtful. One evening, I walked past her room, her rented room, and noticed the glow of her laptop screen. She was practicing for a presentation, her voice steady, her posture determined. I didn't interrupt, but for the first time, I felt proud of her. Slowly, our conversation softened. She asked for advice, not in the old, entitled way, but humbly. I shared what I could, not as her landlord, not even as her rival, but as her sister. And though we didn't erase the past, we began stitching something new. One night, as I sat at my desk, my leather journal lay open beside me. The edges were worn now, the pages filled with my journey, anger, resilience, victories. I ran my fingers over my grandmother's handwriting. When they take your space, create your own. I smiled, because I had. I had carved out not just a space, but a life, one that no one could diminish. And now, in a twist I never saw coming, that same lesson was guiding Emily, too. I closed the journal, the city lights shimmering beyond my window. For years, I thought my story was about loss, about being pushed aside. But it wasn't. It was about reclamation, about turning exile into empire. Emily once took my bedroom. Now she pays rent for my penthouse suite. And the difference between those two moments is the story of who I became.